They were supposed to bring soup, hold my hand, maybe just sit in silence with me while the poison dripped into my veins. My own family. Instead they vanished. Excuses piled up like dirty laundry until they didn't even bother making them anymore. They left me alone in the chemo ward, fighting for my life under flickering fluorescent lights. Now they scroll through their feeds and see me. Sun-kissed, hair grown back, leaning against the polished railing of the Serenity, a yacht slicing through water so blue it hurts the eyes. From the sterile quiet of that cancer clinic to the deck of this boat sailing the goddamn Mediterranean, it's quite the upgrade, isn't it? I wonder if seeing me thrive, truly living, makes them feel sick to their stomachs. I certainly hope so. Because the emptiness they left inside me back then, that was a different kind of nausea. And their consequence? It's only just beginning to dawn on them. Before the world tilted, before the word cancer became mine, life felt blessedly normal. Predictable even. As a young woman in my late 20s, I was finally hitting my stride. My graphic design job wasn't going to change the world, but I enjoyed the creativity, the deadlines, the comfortable routine. I'd poured my heart into my little rented apartment, making it a sanctuary filled with thriving plants. A minor miracle, honestly, and quirky art prints I'd haggle for at weekend markets. It felt safe, stable. Weekends were sacred rituals. Strong coffee and oversized pastries with friends, losing myself on hiking trails just outside the city, or simply sinking into my sofa with a sketchbook, the future feeling like a bright, open possibility. And then there was my family. Mom, Dad, and Chloe, my older sister. We were, by all outward appearances, a tight-knit unit. Sunday dinners were practically mandatory, loud affairs filled with familiar jokes and shared histories. Holidays meant obligatory togetherness, turkey, and maybe a passive-aggressive comment or two from Mom, disguised as concern. I remember one Christmas just a year before everything changed, sitting by their fireplace, warm and content, watching the snow fall outside. Dad had given me this ridiculously oversized sweater I secretly loved. Mom had made her famous pecan pie, and even Chloe had managed a genuine compliment about a project I'd completed. In that moment, surrounded by twinkling lights and the scent of pine, I felt utterly secure, cocooned in what I believed was unconditional love. I trusted them. Implicitly. Looking back, the signs were there, hiding in plain sight. Chloe's jealousy often wore the mask of sisterly teasing, her compliments usually backhanded. Mom's sweetness could curdle into manipulative guilt trips if she didn't get her way. Dad's preferred method of dealing with anything unpleasant was cheerful denial. But these were just family flaws, weren't they? The background static you learned to tune out. I never imagined that static could become a deafening silence when I needed them most. I genuinely thought they were my rock. My safety net. How wrong I was. The doctor's words, stage 3 ovarian cancer, didn't register at first. They floated in the sterile air of his office, alien and menacing. He spoke about treatment plans, prognosis, side effects, but all I heard was a roaring in my ears. The drive home was a blur. The ordinary streets, the people walking dogs, the buses pulling away from curbs, it all seemed offensively normal, utterly oblivious to the fact that my personal world had just imploded. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial my mother's number. Her reaction was immediate, visceral. Tears, shock, declarations of war against the disease. She promised, her voice choked with emotion, "We'll face this together, sweetie. Anything you need will be right there." Dad got on the phone too, his usual booming voice thick with unshed tears, echoing Mom's pledges. Chloe called later, sounding genuinely distraught, vowing to take time off work to be my chemo buddy, my errand runner, my everything. For those first 2 weeks, they swarmed me with support. They helped set up a recovery nest in my living room, piled high with soft blankets and soothing teas. They filled my fridge with healthy food I barely had the appetite to touch. It felt like the Christmas fireplace moment. Warm, secure, proof that my faith in them was justified. This was the family I knew. This was the love I counted on. Then came the day of the first infusion. Mom was my designated driver and handholder. An hour before we were supposed to leave, she called. Her voice was a weak whisper. A sudden, blinding migraine, she explained. She couldn't possibly drive, couldn't even lift her head. Disappointment pricked at me, but I pushed it down. Migraines were awful, I knew that. "Hey Mom," I said, "feel better." I called Chloe next, my backup. "Oh Sarah, shoot," she sounded flustered, genuinely regretful, or so I thought. "My boss just dropped an emergency meeting on us. Mandatory. Like career on the line mandatory. I'm so sorry. Can Dad do it?" My stomach tightened. "Cold Dad." A dramatic sigh crackled down the line. Wouldn't you know it, a pipe burst in the basement. Water everywhere. Waiting for the emergency plumber. Can't leave the house. So sorry, Pumpkin. 3 calls. 3 last-minute, unavoidable crises. Coincidence? Bad luck. Had to be. I ordered a rideshare, the driver's forced cheerfulness grating on my raw nerves. Sitting alone in that waiting room for the first time, surrounded by strangers sharing the same quiet dread, a cold little seed of doubt planted itself in my gut. I tried to ignore it. It was just bad timing, I told myself fiercely. Next time they'd be there. They weren't. 2 weeks later, for my second appointment, it was Chloe's turn. The excuse this time? A surprise, mandatory team-building retreat that had apparently been on the books for months, conveniently never mentioned until the night before. She sounded breathless, apologetic. "I'm gutted, Sarah, truly. But my boss will kill me if I bail." My call to Mom was met with a weak cough. "A nasty stomach bug," she croaked. "Came on overnight. Can barely make it to the bathroom. You understand, right, sweetie? That stuck in unprecedented gridlock traffic clear across town. Couldn't call or text for 3 solid hours because apparently the traffic jam also created a cellular dead zone spanning half the county. Again, I took a taxi. Again, I sat alone, the chemo dripping into my arm. The nurse's smiles seemed tinged with pity now. This time, the seed of doubt wasn't so little. It started to sprout icy tendrils. I started paying closer attention not just to their words, but to the careless digital trails they left behind. Mom's debilitating migraine didn't stop her from posting photos the very next day. Tagged at a rather posh restaurant, clinking champagne glasses with her book club friends. Chloe's career on the line mandatory meeting magically coincided with spa day selfies her boyfriend posted, tagging her blissful cucumber-eyed face. And Dad's catastrophic plumbing disaster? It resolved itself remarkably quickly, allowing him ample time to make his regular afternoon tea time at the golf course, photos courtesy of his golfing buddies' shared album. The excuses weren't just flimsy, they were lies. Transparent, easily disproven lies. Felt calculated, deliberate. One evening, feeling stronger after a few good days, I tried to breach the subject gently with Mom. I called her, keeping my voice light. "Hey Mom, just thinking about the next appointment. It really does make a difference having someone there, you know? It gets kinda lonely and honestly a little scary sometimes." Her response was instant defensiveness. "Sarah, please don't try to make us feel guilty. You know we want to be there more than anything. It's just been one thing after another. Life doesn't stop just because, well, you know, we have obligations too. It's incredibly stressful for us as well, worrying about you constantly." The conversation skidded to a halt, leaving me feeling small, ashamed, and deeply unsettled. Stressful for them? The casual selfishness of it was breathtaking. My battle for survival was apparently an inconvenience disrupting their social calendars. The unease festered, growing into a constant low-grade ache that sat alongside the physical misery of the chemo. The nausea, the bone-deep fatigue, the clumps of hair circling the shower drain. That was hell. But the chilling realization that my own family might be actively avoiding me? That felt like a betrayal too profound to comprehend. Not yet, anyway. The excuses eventually faded, replaced by a chilling indifference. Appointments approached, and my phone remained stubbornly silent. No more last-minute cancellation calls, just nothing. If I dared to call them afterwards, voice weak, body aching, seeking a crumb of comfort, the conversation would be brief, strained, and inevitably pivot back to them within minutes. Chloe got a promotion. Wasn't that wonderful? Mom found the perfect shoes for an upcoming party. Such a relief. Dad had a disagreement with the neighbor about property lines. So frustrating. My life and death struggle was relegated to a conversational footnote, quickly glossed over. The disconnect was staggering. One particularly bleak afternoon, desperate for a shred of normalcy, for the illusion of family support, I drove to their house unannounced. I used the spare key they insisted I keep, for emergencies, they'd said ironically. I found Mom and Chloe huddled over glossy brochures at the kitchen table, sunlight streaming in, highlighting their animated faces. They were laughing, pointing, planning a weekend getaway, a multi-day wine-tasting tour in a nearby scenic valley. The moment they saw me standing in the doorway, pale, gaunt, my head covered by a soft beanie, the laughter died instantly. A look of mingled shock and annoyance flickered across Mom's face before she smoothed it into a mask of strained concern. Sarah, honey, we didn't hear you come in. What a surprise. Chloe wouldn't meet my eyes. She became intensely interested in a speck of dust on the tabletop. We were just looking at some travel ideas, Mom said, her voice a little too high-pitched, a little too fast. Just trying to, keep our spirits up. Distract ourselves from worry. The unspoken accusation hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Distract ourselves from you. Later that same week, the final nail was hammered into the coffin of my denial. I'd accidentally butt-dialed Chloe, and before I could hang up, I heard her talking, her voice sharp with irritation, clearly speaking to a friend. No, I haven't seen her much, she was saying. Honestly, it's always about the chemo, the side effects, how tired she is. Such a total downer, We're trying so hard to stay positive, but it just brings the whole mood down whenever she's around. A downer. My fight for existence was a downer. The phone slipped from my numb fingers. The casual cruelty of it sucked the air from my lungs. It wasn't just avoidance anymore. It was active resentment. Around this time, subtle digs about finances started surfacing. Dad would clear his throat during our rare phone calls and ask, "So, how are you managing with all the medical bills? Chemo sounds awfully expensive. Hope you budgeted for this." Mom would chime in, "Oh yes, your insurance deductible must be huge. Make sure you're being careful, sweetie." They knew I had good insurance through my job, yet they persisted, planting seeds of financial worry. It was insidious. It slowly, sickeningly clicked into place. They didn't just find my illness inconvenient or depressing. They actively resented the perceived burden, the disruption to their comfortable lives, the uncomfortable mirror it held up to their own mortality. Maybe they even saw my potential dependency as a threat to their own resources. The naive daughter, the one who believed in unconditional love, began to fade. In her place, a colder, clearer-eyed woman started to emerge. Someone who finally understood she was utterly alone in this fight. Someone who recorded every slight, every lie, every moment of abandonment. Someone who knew deep down that this story wasn't over. Not by a long shot. My breaking point arrived during the brutal third cycle of chemo. The drugs ravaged my system with a vengeance I hadn't experienced before. I was perpetually nauseous, unable to keep even water down for hours at a time. The fatigue wasn't just tiredness. It was a crushing weight pinning me to the bed, making even breathing feel like an effort. And the loneliness. It was a physical ache, a hollow space in my chest that echoed with every empty hour. My next infusion was scheduled for the following day, and the thought of walking into that clinic alone, feeling this weak, this broken, was simply unbearable. With trembling hands, I called Mom, my voice cracking. "I really need someone tomorrow. I'm having a really rough time. Please." There was a distinct pause on the other end, longer than usual. "Oh, Sarah, honey," she finally said, her voice strangely flat, devoid of its usual forced sympathy. "Tomorrow is just absolutely impossible. Your father and I have that hospital charity gala. We bought the tickets months ago, non-refundable, you know how it is. And Chloe, well, she landed a second interview for that dream job. It's tomorrow afternoon, she absolutely cannot miss it. She's been preparing for weeks. The gala. A job interview. Weighed against their daughter, literally fighting for her life, begging for a hand to hold. And the gala and interview won. Easily. The flimsy excuses were gone, replaced by the cold, hard truth of their priorities. Something inside me didn't just break. It shattered. After I mumbled a choked "okay, understand," and hung up, the tears finally came, hot, angry, despairing tears. But beneath the storm of grief, a strange, icy calm began to spread. If they wouldn't be my safety net, I would have to become my own. Later that evening, seeking solace, needing a connection to someone who had actually cared, I pulled out the storage boxes filled with my late grandmother Eliza's belongings. She'd been my fierce protector, my wise counsel, the one person whose love felt truly unconditional. She passed away a couple of years before the diagnosis, and I missed her pragmatic strength and sharp wit every single day. Sifting through her old letters, photographs yellowed with age, and familiar knickknacks felt like trying to draw strength from a beloved ghost. At the very bottom of a heavy, cedar-lined chest, tucked beneath faded velvet photo albums, was a thick, sealed manila envelope. My name was written on the front in her distinctive, elegant script. Below my name she'd added, "To be opened by Sarah only in case of true need or emergency." My heart hammered against my ribs. My fingers trembled as I carefully slit the seal. Inside wasn't just a letter expressing her enduring love, though that was there too. Inside were legal documents, complex, detailed statements outlining a significant trust fund. Established years before her death, managed by her longtime trusted lawyer specifically for me. The instructions were ironclad. The principal was only to be touched or its existence even revealed to me, under specific dire circumstances, a debilitating illness, a major financial catastrophe, situations where I truly needed a lifeline. Grandmother Eliza, always 5 steps ahead, had prepared for a storm she hoped I'd never have to weather. But the most shocking part, the detail that turned my blood cold, was a separate, notarized letter tucked within the main documents. It was from her lawyer, dated just weeks after my grandmother's funeral. It confirmed, in dry legalese, that my parents, as my closest relatives at the time, had been formally notified of the trust's existence, its substantial value, and its explicit conditions for my access. They knew. They had known for years. All this time, while they made pathetic excuses, while they feigned concern about medical bills, while they abandoned me to face chemo alone, while they complained I was a downer, they knew this safety net existed. A fortune waiting for me, specifically earmarked for a crisis like this. Why hide it? The answer hit me with the force of a physical blow, nauseating and ugly. Did they hope I wouldn't survive, leaving the trust potentially accessible to them? Or perhaps they simply couldn't bear the thought of me having that level of financial independence, that power, that security they themselves weren't providing? The betrayal wasn't just neglect. It was a calculated, potentially greedy act of profound cruelty. The pain was immense, a fresh wound layered over the existing trauma. But alongside it, something else ignited. Not just anger but steel. Resolve. Grandmother Eliza hadn't just left me money. She'd left me ammunition. She'd left me the means to save myself. And, perhaps, the means to deliver a reckoning they would never forget. Grandmother Eliza, bless her foresight, had made everything remarkably straightforward. Her lawyer, a kind, elderly gentleman who seemed to hold my parents in thinly veiled contempt after reading the file, handled the transfer discreetly and efficiently. Suddenly, I had resources. Significant resources. The first call I made wasn't to my family. It was to a renowned oncology center in another state, known for cutting-edge treatments and personalized care. Within weeks, I'd transferred my treatment. I rented a bright, airy service apartment near the new hospital, overlooking a park instead of a parking lot. I hired a private nurse, a warm, competent woman named Maria, for the days the chemo knocked me flat. I consulted with nutritionists who designed meal plans to combat side effects, therapists who helped me process the trauma, both medical and familial, and even indulged in gentle yoga and acupuncture. I poured resources into my recovery, building a fortress of care around myself. And I told my family absolutely nothing. Their occasional texts, "Hope you're feeling a bit better today," or "Thinking of you," now seemed utterly grotesque in their emptiness. I'd reply with brief, fake pleasantries. "Managing okay. Treatment is ongoing. Thanks for asking." I let them believe I was still the struggling daughter, muddling through alone, possibly worrying about bills. Meanwhile, fueled by my grandmother's legacy and a quiet, simmering determination, I fought back against the cancer with everything I had. The new treatments were still tough, But the comprehensive support made a world of difference. Slowly, painstakingly, the tide began to turn. The nausea lessened. Fatigue began to lift, replaced by flickers of my old energy. My hair, when it started to regrow, came in thick and curly. Checkups became less frequent. Scans came back clearer. Until finally, gloriously, unbelievably, the oncologist uttered the word I'd barely dared to hope for: remission. Complete, definitive remission. As my body healed, my mind started planning. The idea of sailing wasn't born of revenge, not initially. It came from a deep yearning for escape, for cleansing, for reclaiming the years cancer and betrayal had stolen. Grandmother Eliza had loved the sea. She'd often spoken of the peace she found on the water. It felt like honoring her as well as healing myself. Using a carefully allocated portion of the trust, I didn't buy just any boat. I secured a long-term charter on the Serenity, a breathtakingly beautiful sailing yacht, sleek lines, teak decks, luxurious but not ostentatious. Large enough for comfort and stability, intimate enough to feel like home. I hired a small, professional and discreet crew, a seasoned captain and a first mate who doubled as a fantastic cook. And then I set sail. My initial social media posts were subtle landscapes. Azure waters meeting volcanic cliffs in Santorini. Quaint, colorful fishing villages nestled in Italian coves. Sunsets bleeding gold and crimson across the vast expanse of the Mediterranean. No captions about health, family, or struggles. Just beauty, freedom, an unspoken sense of well-being. Then, gradually, I started appearing in the photos. A candid shot of me laughing, head tilted back, short hair tousled by the sea breeze. Me steering the yacht, looking focused and capable. Me raising a glass of champagne on the deck at sunset, wearing simple but elegant clothes, looking undeniably healthy, vibrant, and prosperous. My privacy settings were adjusted just so, open enough for the ripples to spread. I knew Chloe, with her obsessive social media habits, wouldn't miss them. I knew it was only a matter of time before she showed mom and dad. The initial silence from their end was deafening. Then the first tentative probe, disguised as casual curiosity, from Chloe via direct message. "Hey Sarah, where are you? That looks incredible. Had no idea you were traveling. So jealous." I replied simply, taking some time to recover and see the world. Smiley face. Next came Mom, a text message buzzing with forced nonchalance and barely concealed suspicion. "Sarah dear, saw Chloe's pictures of your trip. Looks lovely. So glad you're feeling well enough for a vacation. Must have saved up quite a bit for something like that." The money question. Always the money. My reply was equally breezy. "Just enjoying life, Mom. Taking it one day at a time." But the posts continued. More stunning locations. More pictures of me looking radiant, relaxed, and unmistakably affluent against the backdrop of undeniable luxury. Their messages became more frequent, the subtext growing louder. Hints of confusion, threads of envy, and the dawning, panicked realization that the daughter they'd written off was somehow living a life far beyond their comprehension, and certainly beyond their control. The confrontation wasn't going to be a shouting match. It was unfolding slowly, exquisitely, across continents, delivered through curated images of my impossible new reality. They were witnessing my resurrection not just from cancer but from their neglect. And the source of my good fortune remained my delicious, empowering secret, hanging between us like an invisible, shimmering wall. Their bewilderment was becoming my quiet, deeply satisfying overture. The crescendo arrived 6 months into my voyage, under the dazzling sun of the French Riviera. I was docked in a picturesque marina, surrounded by gleaming masts and the low murmur of wealthy vacationers. By then I'd heard through the family grapevine, the cousins and aunts who had offered awkward but genuine support during my illness, that my parents and Chloe were embarking on their own European adventure. A budget package tour, cobbled together, no doubt fueled partly by a desperate need to project an image of normalcy, perhaps even compete with the ghost of my online persona. Call it fate, call it karma, or call it my meticulous checking of the tour itinerary shared by a well-meaning but loose-lipped cousin. Our paths were set to cross. One perfect afternoon, I was seated at a prime table on the terrace of a chic harborside restaurant, enjoying chilled rose and fresh seafood with a charming new acquaintance I'd met through the sailing community. The sun warmed my skin, the conversation flowed easily, and for the first time in years, I felt utterly, uncomplicatedly content. And then I saw them, trudging along the crowded quay, looking distinctly out of their element, hot, flustered, necks craning as they gawked at the superyachts like tourists at a zoo. My parents and Chloe. Their clothes looked cheap and ill-fitting under the harsh Mediterranean sun. Their faces were etched with a weary kind of envy. Their eyes scanned the rows of magnificent vessels, finally landing on the elegant lines of the Serenity. Its polished brass nameplate gleamed. And then their gazes lifted, scanning the restaurant terraces lining the harbor. And they saw me, lounging under a wide canvas umbrella, the picture of relaxed sophistication, laughing easily with my companion, radiating health and a quiet confidence they had never seen in me before. The moment our eyes locked across the bustling promenade was exquisite. Time seemed to slow. My mother's hand flew to her mouth, her face draining of color as she clutched my father's arm for support. His jaw literally dropped, slack with disbelief. Chloe froze mid-step, her expression shifting rapidly from confusion to shock, then curdling into an ugly mask of pure, unadulterated envy and resentment. They stood there, rooted to the spot, mouths slightly open, staring as if they were seeing an apparition draped in linen and sunshine. I didn't get up. I didn't wave. I didn't offer a single word. I simply held their stunned gazes for a long, deliberate moment. Then slowly, intentionally, I gave a small, cool nod. Acknowledgement, yes. But absolutely no invitation. It was a nod that said, I see you. I remember everything. This is my life now, built on the ashes of your abandonment. And you have no place in it. Then, with deliberate calm, I turned back to my companion, picked up my wine glass, and resumed my conversation, dismissing them as completely as they had once dismissed my suffering. I didn't need to see their retreat, though I could feel the burning intensity of their stares on my back for a few moments longer. The power shift was absolute, silent, and devastatingly complete. Later that evening, as expected, my phone erupted. A barrage of missed calls. Voicemails filled with my mother's panicked sobbing, disjointed apologies blurring into demands for explanation. Angry, sputtering texts from my father about disrespect and entitlement. Vicious, type-ridden messages from Chloe accusing me of hiding things, of being selfish, of flaunting, something they couldn't comprehend. I didn't listen to a single voicemail. I didn't read past the first few words of any text. One by one, with steady fingers, I blocked their numbers. That Chloe walked. The final, quiet move was instructing grandmother Eliza's lawyer to send one last piece of correspondence to their home address. A registered letter. It was brief, clinical, and brutal. It stated clearly my awareness of the trust fund they had knowingly concealed. It referenced, without emotion, their documented pattern of neglect and abandonment during my critical illness. And it concluded with a single, unambiguous sentence declaring our relationship permanently severed. Any further attempts to contact me through any means would be reported as harassment. No more drama. No more explanations. Just the cold, hard truth delivered with the finality of a slammed door. Their punishment wasn't about inflicting pain. It was about forcing them to live forever with the consequences of their choices, staring at the life they threw away, forever locked outside the gates of my newfound peace. Life aboard the Serenity settled into a rhythm dictated by the tides and the wind. The endless expanse of the ocean, the salty air, the constant discovery of new shores. It was more therapeutic than any treatment. The physical remnants of cancer faded into memory, replaced by sun-kissed skin and newfound strength. The emotional healing took longer, unfolding slowly under the vast, silent skies. Cutting ties with my family, the people who were supposed to be my first and last bastion of support, left a scar. There were moments, unexpected ambushes of grief, usually late at night when the sea was calm, mourning the family I thought I had, the love I desperately craved. But those moments became fewer, shorter. The overwhelming feeling was one of liberation. A profound sense of peace settled over me, the kind that comes from shedding immense weight. I no longer walked on eggshells, no longer muted my own needs or successes to manage their fragile egos or jealousy. I learned to trust my own instincts, to celebrate my own resilience. I discovered the quiet joy of self-reliance. My family became the wonderful, eclectic mix of people I met along my journey: fellow sailors, artists and residents in small coastal towns, other solo travelers reclaiming their lives. And, of course, the few steadfast friends from home who had shown up, truly shown up when it mattered, proving that blood isn't always thicker than water. News from my old life trickled in occasionally, through carefully filtered channels. The story inevitably got out. Whispers turned into open knowledge within the extended family and their community. The hidden trust fund. The abandoned chemo appointments. The sheer callousness of it all. My parents and Chloe faced a quiet but significant social reckoning. Invitations dried up. Awkward silences followed them into rooms. Their carefully curated image of the perfect, supportive family crumbled under the weight of the truth. Chloe's career reportedly hit a plateau, perhaps tainted by the whispers, perhaps just karma. My parents became more isolated, living with the judgment and the knowledge of what everyone now knew. It wasn't the dramatic downfall one sees in movies, but a slow, quiet erosion of their standing, their reputation, their self-respect. Seeing me thrive wasn't the point of my revenge, not entirely. The point was proving them wrong. Proving that their cruelty, their abandonment, their calculated neglect didn't define my ending. Instead, it inadvertently fueled my rebirth. It forced me to find a strength I never knew I possessed and led me, circuitously, to this incredible life, underwritten by the fierce, protective love of my grandmother. Sailing the world on a yacht wasn't the ultimate act of vengeance. Healing was. Thriving was. Building a life filled with peace, joy, and genuine connection entirely on my own terms. That was the victory. And every sunrise I watch paint the ocean gold from the deck of the Serenity is a quiet reminder that they can only watch from the shore, forever relegated to the life I left behind. The sea breeze tastes like freedom, and honestly, it's sweeter than any revenge.